I know he's probably never going to see this, but if I ever met Joe Rogan, I'd have to ask him one question. Why are you so angry at the Catholic Church?
Urban bluegrass and the Bible.
Okay, before I get started, I want to be very clear. I like Joe Rogan. I think he's a super genuine guy. I think he's seeking knowledge in the world. I think he interviews a diverse group of people, gives them time to speak, and is actually on the forefront of creating a new media exchange in our culture that's probably desperately needing. Instead of having news clips and things like that that are short and taken out of context, he just allows people to just dialogue for 2 or 3 hours at a time. And he gets a diverse group of people. He gets people from comedy and academia and different backgrounds. Like I listened to him yesterday. He had this wolf conservation woman on there. It was a really interesting podcast. I really liked it. But, you know, he'll have guests on sometimes that I'm just not interested in, and I won't listen to that one. I'll give it a few minutes, and I'm like, this is not really vibing with me today. Click, I'm gone. I don't agree with everything he says. He's got some out there views, and obviously as a Catholic, the one that I probably disagree with him most upon is his views on the Catholic Church. I want to be clear. Joe's got a right to his opinion, and I'm not making this video so Joe will respond to it because he's never going to see this. He doesn't care. And he shouldn't. He shouldn't care what I think because I'm a nobody. But, you know, Joe saying I went to Catholic school and then giving these kind of vitriol responses to what the Catholic Church is a type of confirmation bias. And, you know, I went through 12 years of Catholic school, and I was not a good Catholic. You know, at the time, some of the schools I went to did a good job. I had good teachers some years and bad teachers other years. I was not a theologian coming out of Catholic school. But I was well prepared for college, and I went off to the world and found my niche in the world. And here I am today. But what I did do as an adult, as I started to struggle with, do I believe in the faith that my parents tried to instill in me, is I searched on my own. I studied other religions. I studied Buddhism. I studied Judaism. I studied, ancient philosophy, which actually is what brought me back to the church. I started studying Aristotle and these other things. And I was like, man, the church kind of has something that these guys were onto, and it's kind of filled later on with Christianity. So I did that as an adult. And then I went and got a master's degree in theology. So like, I'm not an expert. Just because I have a master's degree, I'm not the authority of the church. But I do feel like I can correct a couple of errors of what Joe is saying. So I want to play a quick clip. It's not long, where he kind of goes off on one of those signature Joe Rogan rants about religion and specifically starts kind of attacking the Catholic Church. And then at the end, I'll give a little bit of feedback. So check this out.
It shows how they really think. That
Absolutely.
you are, and it's scolding. You are not supposed to. It's the same thing that happened when Martin Luther translated the Bible into phonetic languages, because no one could speak Latin. No one had to read Latin. They were poor people. But when he translated it into German and all these different languages that people could read, and said, "Hey, this is up to you to interpret what God said," the church was like, "Hey, you're cutting in on our racket. Like, we need people that are the spokespersons for God." The people that are going to tell you what God meant. You don't get to decide what God meant. That dude is dressed like a wizard. He gets to decide. So they're wearing these crazy costumes that regular people don't get to wear, which makes you think, well, he's got the wacky costume and the fish head hat. Right. He must know more than me. Which is a weird play on authoritarianism. It's a weird. It's a very strange thing that people accept when people have costumes on. Like if cops were wearing like Nirvana t-shirts and board shorts.
Man, I know Joe's smarter than this, and he's got that guy, his producer, that he's always saying, hey, look this up. I feel like they tend to look things up, but they just kind of ignore the things they don't want to get the answers to. First off, Martin Luther, not a champion of transparency. This is a guy that took 7 books out of the Old Testament that Jesus and the apostles read from. They read from the Septuagint. So the books that the Protestant reformers removed, they would have been read at the time of Christ. And while they're not quoted directly in the New Testament necessarily, neither are the other books that the Protestant reformers left in, like Nehemiah and Ezra. They're not quoted in the New Testament, but you leave them in. If a book was read by Christ and we have good evidence for that, we leave it in our Bible. And guess what? They have great knowledge in them. I love the book of Maccabees because I understand the political turmoil in the first century by the time of Jesus. It's good to know what's going on so we understand it in context. So Martin Luther was not trying to be transparent. Matter of fact, he wanted to bring more books out of the Bible. He wanted to take books out of the New Testament like Revelation, James, Hebrews. I can't imagine the hubris you have as an individual to go, you know what? I didn't write this book. I didn't compile this ancient book, but I'm going to be the authority that says what goes in it and what doesn't. The church left the books that have historically always been part of the Catholic canon. That's just the way it was. And we put it in Latin originally because guess what? That was the vernacular language of the Western Roman Empire. When Joe tries to say Latin is indicate that Latin is some secret code that the church invented to keep the people from understanding the Bible, that's intellectually dishonest and it's kind of lazy, to be quite honest. The Western Roman Empire was Latin. The Eastern Roman Empire was Greek. We already had the Septuagint, and all of Paul's letters and the Gospels were written in Greek at some point. So when they translated the entire Bible for the Western Roman Empire, they put it into the most common language of governance, education, and official documents of that region. So the province, the Italian peninsula, and the Roman provinces in the north and west, like Britannia, Germania, Gaul, Hispania, they all would have gotten Latin documents from the official Roman governors. So if you're trying to evangelize those places, you're going to send it in Latin because you know people there can read Latin. And by the time that the reformers start making translations, there had already been tons. There's Germanic copies of the Psalms from the 10th century, way before the Reformation. And I found that with a quick Google search. This is nothing new. So trying to act like the church was keeping the Bible out of the vernacular to try to control people is just false. Now, if you were going to disseminate an official Bible, you had to get approval for that. But that was mostly the secular authorities, not always the church. That's why the Catholic Church to this day does give an imperator on a translation. But the Bible I have right here is a New Revised Standard Version. This was done by Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, and secular scholars. There were people that had all sorts of different agendas when it came to what it said, but they got together and made the most accurate translation they could and agreed upon it before publishing it. There's not this conspiracy to keep the Bible out of people's hands. As a matter of fact, by putting it in Latin, we got it into more people's hands faster. Bad argument. Number two, when Joe attacks the vestments, first off, this is lazy. He's done this joke hundreds of times now. Trying to say that every Catholic out there believes their bishop or priest because they're dressed like a wizard is grossly insulting to the intelligence of every Catholic that has lived and ever will live. The vestments mean something. Because you don't understand it, you make fun of it. That would be like me saying, I'm not going to listen to Post Malone or Jelly Roll when they come on Joe Rogan's podcast because they have face tattoos. To me, it's a little odd. I wouldn't personally do it myself, and I get it. I mean, most people don't have face tattoos. You immediately see that and you go, well, this is strange. But then I listen to these individuals talk, and they have interesting stories and, uplifting stories about coming back from adversity and changing their lives. Hey, that's great. You listen to them instead of throwing barbs at them. The vestments mean something to us. Because you don't understand them, you make fun of them. The white alb signifies the baptismal promises of the priest. When they wear their vestments, they're stepping into their role, acting in person of Christ to offer the sacrifice of the Mass or listen to our confessions. They're acting in a role that they were commanded to. And the fish hat that you think is so funny looking, and yes, by modern standards, it's odd, it signifies the apostolic authority of the bishop. He's saying, I, as bishop, am the successor of the original apostles that Jesus appointed, and I am in unity with my brother bishops around the world, including the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, who installs every bishop. Does the bishop wear the hat everywhere he goes? No. You don't see a bishop walking down the street with his mitre on. He wears it in liturgical settings to signify in that moment he is coming as the unifying force of the Catholic Church in our region. Our bishop here unifies us with the bishop in New York, the bishop in Boston, LA, Rome, Venice, wherever. It's a symbol. And because you don't understand the symbol, you disparage those that do believe in the religion that is part of that vestment. And to me, that just seems a little lazy. So, if anybody ever gets this to Joe Rogan, my advice would be, Get him to interview an authoritative Catholic that can answer his questions and his criticisms of the Catholic Church in an honest and cordial manner. The one I would pick would probably be Bishop Barron. I know that Joe Rogan is friends with Lex Friedman. Lex Friedman has interviewed Bishop Barron in the past. Bishop Barron is charitable. He's patient. He's understanding. And he's got a sense of humor. He's not going to take anything Joe says personal and get mad at him and storm off. I've seen Joe kind of swipe some Catholics that come on his show because he knows they're practicing Catholics. And he'll make fun of stuff, but they're not like trained theologians. They don't know how to answer his questions. Actually, the person I think that would be best for Joe Rogan to interview would probably be Jimmy Akin. Jimmy's been at Catholic Answers for 30 years. He's a convert to the Catholic faith. He grew up kind of dabbling in all the New Age mysticism of the 60s and 70s. He's interested in cryptozoology and conspiracy theories, and he takes them seriously. He'll research these topics before dismissing them out of hand, something Joe prides himself on doing. But he'll also be honest about them and say, I don't believe this one or I do believe that one. But he's also spent 30 years answering questions about the Catholic faith and openly debating people that would disparage it. I think he's perfect for Joe Rogan. I think they have a kindred spirit, and I think they'd hit it off swimmingly. Matter of fact, I think they could do an entire episode on conspiracy theories and not even touch the Catholic Church and maybe come back for a second interview, because that's what Joe does. He'll talk to people multiple times. He won't just sit there and just give them 10 minutes and expect them to change his mind in a 15-second sound bit. He'll spend 3 hours with them, and I think those are two candidates that could do a great job on that. Look, if anybody's getting their information on the Catholic Church from Joe Rogan, we got to remember something. This is the guy that claims he went to first and second grade in Catholic school and then tries to act like he's an authority. My scenario would be, hey, Joe, maybe be a little bit more charitable towards Catholics and talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about before you throw everybody under the bus. I think you're looking for truth, Joe. I hope you're the best. I'm praying for you, man. And honestly, we would love to get you back in the fold. Don't know that that's ever going to happen, but I would at least love to get you back to a point where you see the Catholic Church as something to be recognized for its contributions to Western civilization and not disparaged at every turn. If you guys like this information, if it helped, if it answered questions on some of the things Joe said for you, do me a favor, like and subscribe down on the bottom. I hope you guys are having a great day. God bless, and I hope you keep aging towards perfection.
Urban bluegrass and the Bible.